What would you say is the most generically helpful or useful piece of advice you have for a small business owner or a micro business owner?
I think some of the most important qualities, like the qualities to balance in your own heart, is humility and sovereignty. And it's like the humility keeps us in service. It keeps our heart open, keeps us learning and growing and willing to make mistakes and not having to be like, not having to be on a pedestal or perfect. But the sovereignty allows us to nurture and grow in our power, so we're not collapsed, so that we have the ability to move forward, so we have the ability to guide our business, to be in our strength, and to move forward in the world.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to a brand new episode of Might Help, Can't Hurt, Conversations with Leaders, Doers, and Friends. And my leader doer friend today is Mark Silver. Mark, how you doing? I'm trying to remember the last time we properly spoke, and it feels like a very long time ago.
I think it's been a while. I mean, the truth is that we've known each other for a very long time, and so there's been some. But it has been a while since we've spoken. But of course, the last couple of years have been difficult and challenging for a lot of people. So I know for me.
Oh, you guys noticed that too? I thought that was just out here.
Yeah.
So now since we last talked, you moved. Now, did you move? I envisioned, because you sort of moved to the country. I envisioned there was a TV show in the UK called The Good Life, where this couple from the city moves out and they have a small holding and they grow their own food and have chickens, and was it that kind of move?
Well, we did that move, and we were there for some years, and then that could be a whole conversation in itself. But we moved from there, and we're now in the city of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, is where we are now. So it's it's
so no chickens in Harrisburg.
Not at the moment, although friends up the street have chickens, but we don't.
Yeah, our neighbors just got chickens.
Supposed to in the city limits, so we won't mention.
Yeah, I saw nothing. So, for those of you who don't, for those people who don't know you, I kind of think, and I suddenly got terrified that I'm remembering it wrong, but you'll correct me. Like, the tagline of your business, as I remember it, was that every act of business is an act of love.
Yes, can be an act of love, right? Hopefully, in a good moment, is an act of love. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, less catchy when you kind of qualify it like that, but I know what you mean. We're on a bad day.
I've never been that good at catchy. It's true.
But what you bring that approach to something, and I've not heard the expression before, micro businesses.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so micro business is.
Well, so I love the dog. My dog is right down here behind me.
I was going to bring the chickens in too, but
so we may hear from him as well. Yeah. So there's large businesses, there's medium-sized businesses, and then there's what's called small business. But small business, in the way that it's normally defined, usually can involve dozens of employees and millions of dollars in revenue. And it doesn't quite capture that, where we focus, which is the micro business, which is self-employed, where there's just one person, maybe with a little bit of help, up to maybe a very tiny team, like a handful of people, which is the size of our business as well. And, we don't have tens of millions in revenue. It's not at that, at that side of things. So it's like this kind of human scale, tiny businesses.
Have you happened to see, there's a series my wife and I started watching just yesterday called Wall Street, WAHL, and it follows Mark Wahlberg, the actor.
No, I haven't seen that.
It turns out he has about 8 businesses on top of Yeah, and they're big, like they're, you know,
I knew
gyms.
he had a restaurant. Our
He's
boys
got
are
a
actually
restaurant chain, Wahlburgers.
right,
Well, and
right,
and I'm watching this, and half of me is thinking, "Oh yeah, that's how I should be as an entrepreneur," and half of me is going, "Oh my God, this looks awful."
right,
And,
right.
you know, for you, when you're working with people, how do you help people kind of balance that notion of bigger is better
Yeah.
with
Well, I mean,
whatever else?
well, it's an interesting question because most of the people, a lot of the people that we work with, bigger, like the bigger they're trying to get to is just trying to replace a professional level income, you know, or get to a professional level income that maybe they've never had, or maybe a little beyond that.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are some, you know, there are a few people at the far end that are wanting to go bigger, but so many of them are embedded in this desire to really serve people, and they really cherish their lives. That I don't really get many people coming to me that are kind of hard charging, grow at any cost, build an empire kind of people. And
Well,
so
it's all that love stuff you talk about. I'm sure
I
that.
know it's the love thing. It's like, God, who needs love? It's like we all need love. So yeah, so it's but we do end up talking a certain amount about like what are we aiming for? In fact, a lot of times I'm asking our clients to aim a little bit higher, simply because many of them haven't been self-employed or had a business before or had a successful business before, and a lot of times it's hard to calculate the kinds of costs that go into that, you know, aiming for the low six figures usually just means a decent income with retirement. You know, it doesn't mean you're getting rich at
Yeah.
that level, because, you know, you do need help. You do need to pay for tech support. You do need to, you know, invest in your business, and of course pay taxes and these kinds of things. So I'm often helping people to account for those extra costs and to expand their vision a bit in terms of what's possible.
Right. So I'm thinking of my kids. So like my son has just had jobs as an event planner.
Hmm.
That all fell apart with the pandemic. Was, you know, basically on unemployment throughout the pandemic, but now has taken his next real job.
Oh,
But,
good.
but there's debate. He's had debate. A lot of his friends. You know, do we try and set up something on our own? Do we try and get employed? Like, do you have a sort of a take on employment versus micro businessy self-employment?
Yeah. I mean, my take is that there's no right answer. You know,
Right.
there's so many different paths in this world, and for some folks, um, they have a passion that isn't easily translated into a job or, you know, into a business, and they may be better served having a job they enjoy that, you know, isn't. It's like our mission in life doesn't have to be self-employed. You know,
Right.
it doesn't have to carry that, and our businesses don't have to carry all that we care for. Like, you know, I've one of the things that I've gotten pretty decent at over the last bit of time is woodworking. You know, in fact, I'll show it off. I built this cherry wood stool
Ooh,
that I use because I needed it at a particular height so that when I sat down, I'm at the same height for the camera, whether I'm
right.
standing or sitting. And I love it. And I love it. And I've built other things, and people going, "Oh, can I buy something from you?" And I'm like, "No, it's not a business. It's just something I love to do for friends and family." So I think that, you know, there are a variety of skills that are needed to make a business work, and commitment over time.
Mm.
There's it's not necessarily better to be self-employed. There are upsides to it. You know, you often have more control over your schedule if you choose to take more control over your schedule. I've seen people run by their businesses too, rather than running their business. I'm sure you've seen that.
I would think
And
that's more common than not. Yeah.
I think it is. And so I mean, just to kind of tie this in as much of a bow as I can, I don't think one is inherently superior to another. I think that it depends what's in your heart. It depends what you're up for, you know? And I've advised people to not start businesses, you know, to get a job. I've advised people to start a business, to get a job. To let go of their job when the timing's right. I've helped people, you know, judge the timing on what needs to be in place to be able to let go of a job safely.
Because that's actually that's a nice place to go. Like, so are there some? I've got echo on your side now. I don't know if we can do it, but are there some generics in terms of what you would recommend somebody has in place before they make the transition from?
There are. You know what? If you're getting echo, let me try switching over to my headset and see if that gets rid of the echo, because it's
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me if that fixes things.
I think regular viewers are very used to our high-tech approach to this. So.
Yeah. As I was saying before we went live, like this new kind of camera quality, lighting, everything's new to me too. As of yesterday. Yeah, you know, there's a real challenge in knowing when to be self-employed, you know, to let go of the business. And the one thing that I have been very dead set against is the whole cliff diving approach, meaning, oh, I'm starting a business and I'm quitting my job and I'm going to have it up and running in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or a year. And 99% of the time that doesn't happen. You know, it often takes a lot of iteration. It takes a lot of practice. If you've never been self-employed before, there's all kinds of emotional and spiritual things that people have to walk through, new skills to take on. It's not that it's impossible. It's just that, you know, sometimes it's nice to have a little pressure, but to have survival panic on you is not good for creativity.
I've noticed
contrary to like a lot of people, there's this common wisdom out there that I think is not wise, that says, oh yeah, you've got to have this pressure and this hunger or you can't produce. And I think that's capitalist nonsense. I think that a lot of times we are at our most creative when we are relaxed and not fearing for our survival. You know, and so I'm not into cliff diving. I'm into helping people put some things in place over time until it's time to jump. And some of the markers I look for, I ask people when they're thinking about going full time to calculate what I call the squeeze by, the squeak by number. And the squeak by number is what minimum do you need to keep food in the fridge, keep the lights on, keep the bills paid. This is not, you know, you're not necessarily paying all the taxes you're supposed to be paying. You're not putting aside money for retirement. You're not, you know, you're not doing all the ideal things. But how much so that you can, it needs to be coming in per month so that you know you're going to be okay and you're not going to be harmed.
Yeah.
And that's often a lower number than people give credit to. And so when you have enough in place in your business that you can consistently hit your squeak by number, and you know, there's a couple other pieces to that, you know, that you understand who you're trying to reach, that you have an offer, that you have clients, enough clients coming in to hit that squeak by number, that you can start to predict, oh, you know what, I'm feeling confident I can hit the squeak by number over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months. Then you can start saying, you know what, I can let go of this job. I can then open up my space so that I can really make a go of it.
You know, there's an old joke about a guy who you know, it falls out of an airplane and without and he's praying and screaming all the way down, and then he goes to heaven, and sort of apparently what happens in heaven in the joke is you get to review your life and death, and so he's watching it with God, and God goes, now I did hear your prayer. You know that's not how it works. I couldn't save you, but I noticed that when we got down to about 15 feet and you stopped praying. Why was that? And he said, oh, I figured I could jump from there. But, it sounds like it's like, okay, oh yeah, okay, I can do it from here, right? There's still going to be that jump, but it's a survivable jump.
But it's a survivable jump. It's a survivable jump at that point. And you know, this is our 20th year in business for Heart of Business, and over the years, I've had and I had a job in the beginning. I had a part-time job before I went full-time. And you know, my wife was chronically ill. Like it was still a scary jump, you know? And, you know, and like my family has some resources. I knew we weren't going to be out on the street, you know, and it was still a scary jump, you know? And I think it's important to kind of acknowledge those kinds of resources, because I think that a lot of times those resources aren't acknowledged by people that are really successful. I've seen people really successful, they're doing all kinds of things, and they're not being honest about the fact that their spouse has a 6-figure job and funded their startup, and there was no worry about failure, you know, as opposed to other people that are single parents and they don't have family resources behind them. It's like I've had too many people come to us over the years, their savings depleted if they ever had any, the credit cards maxed out, and they're like, I thought I was going to be able to get the business up and running quicker. And I'm like, you know what? And this is a lot why we have our business in a pay from the heart model, where people can choose what they're going to pay us. You know, we're clear about what our sustainable amount is, but we always say, like, if it's going to threaten your food or shelter, you can pay us less. But I always say, like, you know, take care of yourself, take care of your babies, like get a job or a part-time job or something while you're putting things in place. Like, it takes time to build a business. Anything that's worthwhile takes time. And,
well, I often talk to people about, in that kind of situation, about who are kind of, I find that when people have a passion, they feel like they're only allowed to get money for the passion. So you know, an artist, and it's like, no, I will only accept money from my art, and you know, or I'm selling out, and I always look at it like the old patronage model. So you know, in the old days, an artist used to rely on a patron who paid their bills while they did their art. Well, to me, so your job is your patron, you know, so it's no different in my mind.
Right, exactly. It can very much function like that. And, you know, look, we're in a dysfunctional, life-killing, you know, destructive economy in late-stage capitalism. It doesn't, you know, especially here in the United States, but a lot of places in the Western world, we don't care. We don't take care of people. We don't value things that are really important, like art, and, you know, like creativity, like child rearing. You know, there's all these things that are incredibly critical parts of our culture and our lives that bring meaning to our lives. But look at where the money goes. You know, it goes to people who, you know, play games with money, or who are destroying the earth, or all of these things. It's like, you know, business can be done in a much healthier way, but there's so much of our economy that isn't. And so the idea that you're selling out, you know, it's bringing too much weight on the individual. And it's not taking into account how dysfunctional the system is.
Well, let me ask you about that, because when you mentioned it earlier, I've never had a business coach leader come on and use the phrase capitalist nonsense. So how do you reconcile being a business coach, business leader in a culture that is designed around something that to your mind is fundamentally dysfunctional?
Well, I think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding about, you know, this conflation between business and capitalism. Capitalism historically came in only in the Western world. There were other advanced societies that had all kinds of complex financial and commerce pieces, but it was the Western world, Europe in particular, in the 1600s that, you know, created the concept of the corporation, that created, you know, really dangerous forms of chattel slavery, that created really dangerous. There's a whole history here that I could spin out, but I don't want to go. We would be here for hours if I went in too deep into that. But it essentially put power and wealth into very few hands, and it put the common person into a place of really just a really dangerous place. I mean, like you start talking, I mean, I can't help it. You know, you start about the enclosing of the commons in Europe that made it so that individuals couldn't support themselves, you know, that they were then forced into wage slavery in the industrializing world. It's really a hellish landscape that has been created by the industrialization of the Western world. Like, and I'm not saying that there aren't good things that have come out of Western culture. I'm a product of Western culture myself.
Yeah.
You know, my people are from Europe, Jewish, Eastern Europe, Ashkenazi background, and we can do commerce, we can do business, we can do relationships around our livelihoods and around our creativity that are much more life-affirming than the mega global corporate centric way of doing business that has taken over the world over the last couple centuries and started, in fact, about 4 centuries ago. And so capitalist nonsense creates someone like a Jeff Bezos, however you pronounce
Bezos, I think.
we
want to get it right for the lawsuit that's coming. Carry on, Mark.
I know. I have no respect for him. He has created a predatory model that depends on wielding wealth and political power to control and suppress competition. He has more money than anyone should ethically or morally have control over. He could wave his hands and do away with poverty and homelessness and chooses not to. He fights against taxation, which is really just paying into the system that his business is dependent on. That's capitalist nonsense, and is deadly. It's deadly to our hearts. It's deadly to our spirit. It's deadly to our culture. And there are smaller versions of that
to an individual then level. So, because that's the culture that people are trying to build businesses inside of.
Right, or adjacent to.
Or okay, so that's like, oh, look at them. But kind of tied into it in every other way. So what I've seen is that for many people, that becomes part of the obstacle. Is they're kind of trying to get good at something that they fundamentally object.
Well, this is exactly true. I'm glad you've mentioned this, because this is what we see over and over again. Is we see so many people see examples of business that feel repugnant to the caring heart, and people think that, oh, I have to either not do business at all, or I have to somehow get over my issues with business and with money. But what I say to folks is that anyone with heart would have those feelings. Anyone with heart, like we don't want you to get over those issues ever. But what I do ask people to do, and what I ask myself to do, is to lean in and to look at the discomfort and see, okay, marketing has been done in a really terrible manipulative way, which traces its roots back to the birth of psychology. There's a lot of like really concrete history in
Oh,
here
Edward
where,
Bernays. It was
where,
Freud's nephew that basically created the modern field. It was.
Well, it's true. And early corporations, early ad agencies hired these fledgling psychologists to manipulate sales. I mean, it's like it's all there in the history, not in the history books, but it's there to be found. But regardless, we look at that and we go, ugh, I don't ever want to do marketing, but I don't want people to do that. I want people to lean in and instead say, is there another way? I am in this world and I have something that people need or people want or would enjoy. How can I reach those people without hurting my heart? Is there a way to do that? And there is a way. There are ways to do that, but you have to be willing to walk through the discomfort and to find those ways, like the ways that I teach and other people teach.
Yeah. I got a really nice blog post from you, I'm sure many people did, recently, where you talked about marketing, and one of the bits that I remember was you talked about the difference between convincing and inviting. Which I just thought was a nice, simple way of distinguishing between the sort of manipulative, how do I get you to, and hey, we've got a hell of a party going on if you want to come.
Right, exactly. There's a way to talk to people so that they feel cared for. And if it's coming from a sincere place, it's really beautiful. But it's letting go of the idea that you need to convince people that people are staring at you like this, and you somehow have to convince them to buy from you. And that's not true. You don't have to.
So this is an unanswerable question that I'm going to ask you to answer. But how far can a business go on care?
I think it's a really good question. And there is a complex answer because it depends on how encompassing the care is. Like, are you including yourself in the care? Are you including your team? If you end up bringing a team along, are you including them in the care? Are you including every single customer in the care? Are you including your local community that your business is embedded in the care? Are you including the whole economy? Are you including the most vulnerable among us in the care? I think there are places that a business can go that can be very beautiful, where all of that care can be included. And I think there are limits that we can hit where we can't really go beyond that without harming people. Right. And I don't think there are hard lines. I think that there's too many variables to create hard lines. But I think that the extremes help to define the gray area a little bit more. Like if you look at Walmart, if you look at Amazon, you look at these large corporations, they are so clearly far beyond it. And then you look at the other end and you see people, healers and transformative workers and craftspeople that are struggling, and they are clearly they can go much further. There is a place where we can go too far, but we need to hold this encompassing view of care. And I love the way you phrase that. So thank you.
Well, it's a question wrestled might be the right word, but we've spent a lot of time on in our business is just looking at, if we really are going to make care the heart of this, can we do more than squeak? Because I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of ways I could squeak, but I like the bigger game. I've been doing it for 30 years. The little game's just not that hard. It's not that engaging anymore. So it's an active question that we're working inside of.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of happy to do it as an experiment and to go, well, let's find out.
Right.
I don't know, but.
And I think that we may not know. Like it's hard to know. You have to be willing to make mistakes, and I have to be willing to hear when I've crossed lines, when I've caused harm, when something's gone awry, and it's like, ooh, okay, let's back up and let's take a look. And it's like, is that a hard line, or is there something we can do to continue to care for people, even if we're continuing onward? But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. It's even when I think about our business and like thinking about accessibility and thinking about the disabled community, it's like there's a certain amount of our budget that goes to trying to make things accessible, increasing our production budget, paying for captioning under videos, paying for transcripts, paying, like doing all of these things that are higher costs that I don't think are absolutely necessary if you're squeaking by. I mean, I would like to say they're necessary, but realistically, if it's a choice between buying groceries and paying for transcripts, please buy groceries. But as you start to earn profits, we need to bring everybody along. We can't leave people out. At least that's my take on things.
No, it's funny because one of the initiatives that I wanted to introduce into the business, and I think I probably brought it up for the first time about 18 months to 2 years ago, was that we become carbon neutral because we travel all over the world and we bring people in all over the world. Well, we succeeded this year, but not in a sustainable way.
Right.
Okay, so I know it's possible, but so I mean, I think those are interesting questions. Where, at a corporate level, I wouldn't even know how to balance it, but because there's only a few of us, we are a micro business in your definition. We kind of can have those conversations.
Yeah,
and they're conversations really clarify motive.
Say that again. You broke up just a little bit.
They really clarify motive.
They do.
And honestly, a lot of the time, I don't know the motive until I feel it. Like it's like, I don't know, it's just what I know to do. And then you bump up against something and go, okay, well, why am I doing this? And sometimes
really
I like the answer, and sometimes I really don't like the answer, but it's the right question, or it feels like the right question.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think that in this experiment, in this journey of expressing love, of carrying love in business, of carrying care in business, like I said before, I don't want anyone to be afraid of making mistakes. I want us to make mistakes. I want us to bump up. I don't mind bumping up against those boundaries as long as I'm not barreling through them, as long as I'm keeping my heart open and being aware about feedback and responding with care. It's like I don't think we can move through life being afraid of taking steps, but we also don't want to be at the other extreme. And I'm a Sufi Muslim, and so one of the teachings from my sheikh is that the Sufi way is the middle way. It's like we proceed on the two wings of hope and fear. Fear is what keeps us from being heedless. It keeps us away from the cliff edge. It helps us be aware of whether we're caring or not, of whether we're causing harm, of whether we're creating damage to ourselves or others, among other things. But hope is what keeps us from being paralyzed by fear. It keeps us inspired. It keeps us dreaming and moving forward and growing. And we need both wings. We can't proceed just on hope, because then we can become heedless. We can run people over and say, oh, that's just the haters, which is a terrible way to go through life. But without the fear, without the hope, we can't proceed. Without the fear, we can't stay connected to the larger whole.
So I've got two kind of last questions, one of which I ask everybody, but one just for you. And so if you, based on the 20 or so years that you've been doing this kind of work with these kinds of people, I don't know what else to call it, what would you say is the most generically helpful or useful piece of advice you have for a small business owner or a micro business owner?
I think some of the most important qualities, like the qualities to balance in your own heart, is humility and sovereignty. And the humility, it's almost what I was just saying about the two wings. It's like the humility keeps us in service. It keeps our heart open, keeps us learning and growing and willing to make mistakes and not having to be like, not having to be on a pedestal or perfect. But the sovereignty allows us to nurture and grow in our power, so we're not collapsed, so that we have the ability to move forward, so we have the ability to guide our business, to be in our strength, and to move forward in the world. And so there's a lot of strategy and tactics that are more specific to where you are developmentally. But I think in an inward way, what carries us through is this nurturing of both humility and sovereignty. And
No, I like
that's what I love to see.
No, and I have different language, and I've never paired them quite as cleanly. But it's the things that I see is there's got to be a degree of what you're calling sovereignty, what I would call ownership. Mm-hmm. But then there's also got to be what you're calling humility, I call humanity. There's got to be an acceptance of all of it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be messy. We're dealing with humans.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
All right, now you get everybody's question. So I have a rare power, which is that I can temporarily bestow Emperor of the Universe onto you. And so I'm going to make you Emperor of the Universe. And I'd like to know what your first decree would be. So you as Emperor of the Universe, you get make a decree. What's your first decree?
I think when you ask that question, my heart quakes a bit, and I think the first decree needs to be to abdicate that, because there's no person that should ever occupy that throne. Like, in my perspective, there is only one quote unquote owner, which is the oneness, the divine, that we are all expressions of. When we're facing the oneness, we're just an expression of that. When we're facing other humans, we're equals. And I think that that's the only, like, in this moment, that's the only thing my heart is comfortable with as I sit with the question. Because I think that exact framing, that exact question is at the heart of so much pain in our world, is that people try to take power in ways that aren't healthy, that they try to duplicate. Like, when we duplicate divine structures with human beings, we inevitably create harm. And it's not that there's never a power structure. It's not that there can't be leaders. People need to, sometimes it's right for people to be in leadership. Sometimes in the moment, a certain person is the right leader. I own my business and I have team working for me. I am the leader. And that's within a very limited realm. And it is, it's subject to a lot of outside influence, and people who work for me can walk if they want to. It's like I think when our power gets to be too big, and this is the problem with a lot of these large companies, is that the humility is no longer accessible. They begin to believe that they are outside the realm of consequences for their actions. And I believe we lose our humanity when we lose that. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's what.
No, it's a beautiful answer, and I'm sure very embarrassing to the people who wanted to make sure that everybody had enough chocolate chip ice cream as their I think it's a really honest answer, and I think it fits. Like it fits with the way you've been talking about things. I think it's beautiful. Mark, it has been an absolute delight. If you want to learn more about Mark, obviously you got show notes, but also it's is it heartofbusiness.com?
Heartofbusiness.com. Yes.
Heartofbusiness.com.
Yeah.
Let's not leave it quite so long next time, Mark.
Yeah, it's always a delight to spend time with you, Michael. I really deeply appreciate being invited in to this conversation.
Beautiful. Thanks, everybody.